Welcome to the Fashion Edit by Blog on Fashion, your ultimate destination for style inspiration, trend insights, and everything you need for a fashion-forward lifestyle.
Welcome back, everybody. Today's deep dive is going to be, well, a little unexpected.
Oh,
We're talking about the color brown.
brown. Really?
Yeah, it might sound a little, I don't know, boring maybe, but hear me out.
Okay.
Brown might be the new black.
Wow.
Seriously. So we're diving deep into that idea today. The history of brown in fashion, why it's suddenly so trendy, and how you can maybe even incorporate it into your own wardrobe.
It's funny how the perception of colors can change so much, Like, black has always been seen as elegant and sophisticated.
Right, a classic.
Exactly. But this podcast, it suggests that brown could be, well, reaching a whole new level of chic.
And you know what? That episode actually starts with a kind of history lesson on brown in fashion.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's not exactly the glamorous story you might expect. It turns out brown has often been, well, kind of overlooked, especially in the high fashion world.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Starting in the late 2010s, there was a noticeable shift.
Oh, what happened?
Big fashion houses, like
Uh-huh.
Bottega Veneta, Hermes, they all started incorporating earthy tones into their collections.
Like they were sensing a change coming.
Exactly. And then, well, the pandemic hit.
Right.
And with it came this, I don't know, this collective longing for comfort, for a connection to nature.
And brown, with its earthy, natural roots, it just fits perfectly with that feeling.
It really does. That back to nature vibe is huge right now.
Absolutely.
You see it everywhere. In the podcast, they really hammer this point home by talking about how much brown has been dominating the runways lately.
Oh, interesting. What were some of the examples they gave?
Saint Laurent, for example, they had these amazing chocolate leather coats.
Ooh, I love that.
Right, and not just, classic shapes, but these oversized, almost rebellious designs. Just
Interesting.
like they were challenging what feminine style is supposed to look like.
I see what you mean. And it's not just the color itself, right? It's the overall aesthetic, like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not just one designer either. Max Mara had these gorgeous caramel knits, but again, with that emphasis on comfortable, relaxed fits.
Right, and these are big names, influential designers making these choices, so it really feels like more than just a fleeting trend.
Yeah, like a real movement.
Exactly. Okay, so brown is having a moment. That much is clear. But the podcast goes deeper and asks, why?
Yeah, why now?
Exactly. And one key factor they highlight is the rise of sustainability, of eco-consciousness in fashion.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Doesn't it? People
Yeah.
are really starting to care about where their clothes come from and how they're made.
For sure, consumers are becoming much more discerning.
And brown, with that natural connection to the earth, well, it just aligns perfectly with that whole awareness.
It's like brown has become this symbol of responsible style.
I love that. And what I also found really interesting was how they presented brown as this fresh alternative to black, especially with minimalist fashion becoming so popular.
Yeah, it's funny when you think about it. Brown can be just as chic and sophisticated as black, but with a warmth and softness that feels more approachable.
Totally. And they actually brought in a stylist who was saying that brown can work beautifully for both casual and formal looks.
Oh, wow, so versatile.
I know.
Huh.
They even played some street-style interviews where people were talking about how they use brown in their everyday wardrobes.
Oh, cool.
It was really inspiring hearing how effortlessly they were styling things like brown boots with denim or those comfy brown knit sweaters.
It really shows how brown can bridge the gap between effortless style and, being conscious of your consumption.
It's like it speaks to people who want something that's both beautiful and meaningful.
It's not about chasing the latest fad. It's about finding a style that feels authentic and lasting.
Exactly. That's such a good point. But okay, let's get practical for a minute. How do you actually wear brown? What are the styling tips?
Well, the podcast had some fantastic advice. One thing that really stood out to me was this idea of creating monochrome looks with different shades of brown.
Ooh, I love that.
Right. It's like creating this whole outfit using different tones of the same color, almost like a symphony in brown.
A symphony in brown. I love that. That sounds so elegant.
Doesn't it? And they gave this great example, a dark chocolate turtleneck paired with a lighter camel coat and some tan boots.
That's a look. Super sophisticated, but still easy to wear.
Right, and it doesn't have to be complicated at all. They also talked about incorporating brown through accessories like a bag, a belt, or even a watch strap.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Little ways to add a touch of warmth and sophistication without having to, redo your whole closet.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really fun. They were encouraging people to experiment with textures, too.
Oh, tell me more.
Like, they talked about pairing a smooth brown leather jacket with a soft, fluffy, like beige cashmere sweater. You get this amazing interplay of textures that just adds so much visual interest.
That's such a good idea. I love the idea of like breaking away from the traditional rules and really just embracing how versatile brown can be.
Right. And the best part, this isn't just for the high fashion crowd. The podcast pointed out how brands like Zara and H&M are all over brown now, too.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I know. It makes this trend accessible to everybody, regardless of budget.
It feels like a much more inclusive way of thinking about style.
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the history of brown in fashion, the reasons behind its sudden popularity, and even gotten some real-world styling inspiration.
It's been fascinating.
But this is just the beginning. Up next, we're going to be diving deeper into the future of brown and seeing if this trend has real staying power or if it's just a passing fad.
Can't wait. So where do we go from here? What does the future hold for brown? The podcast hosts, they seemed pretty convinced that brown is more than just like, a flash in the pan.
Right. And they actually brought on this fashion analyst who was suggesting that brown is actually part of this larger shift happening in fashion towards those those more subtle natural color palettes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense when you think about it, especially with everybody being obsessed with fast fashion and those fleeting trends. Brown really represents, I think, this return to like those classic pieces that you can wear forever.
Totally. And it's not just about the longevity of the clothes, but the longevity of the color itself.
Yeah.
Brown just has this timeless quality,
Yeah.
It never really seems to go out of style.
That's such a good point. Yeah. We might see more brown on the runways one season and less the next, but it always seems to stay relevant and sophisticated.
Makes me wonder if this whole thing with brown, if it reflects like a bigger cultural shift as well.
Ooh, that's an interesting thought.
Right. Like, are we also moving away from those, those loud, flashy trends in other areas of our lives, too? Like,
Yep.
are we embracing a more grounded, authentic aesthetic?
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't surprise me. Like, think about how popular natural materials are in interior design now, or that whole focus on, like, farm-to-table dining.
Yeah, you're right. It does feel like there's this growing desire for simplicity and authenticity everywhere you look.
Maybe it's even like a reaction to all the digital overload we're constantly bombarded with.
That could be it.
Brown just represents this, I don't know, this visual break from all that overstimulation.
There's a reason why people find nature so restorative, right?
Exactly.
And brown, with that connection to those earth tones and natural materials, I think it evokes that same sense of peace and tranquility.
So it becomes as much about feeling good as it is about looking good.
Absolutely. Fashion isn't just about clothes, right?
No, definitely not.
It's about expressing ourselves and how we want to interact with the world around us. And I think brown speaks to that desire for a deeper connection, not just to nature, but to ourselves.
In a more mindful way of living.
Exactly.
Oh, and speaking of mindfulness, the podcast actually wraps up by giving some practical tips on how we can, bring more brown into our own wardrobes.
Oh, perfect timing. I was just wondering about that.
Right. And one of their suggestions was start small. Like, if you're not used to wearing a lot of brown, you can start with accessories.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like a belt or a bag, or even just a brown watch strap.
It's subtle, but it still makes a statement.
Exactly. And once you feel more confident, you can start investing in a few key pieces,
Like what?
like a really well-tailored brown coat or a classic brown leather jacket.
Yeah, a brown leather jacket is so versatile.
I know, you can dress it up or down,
Yeah,
and it just adds this instant cool factor to, well, pretty much any outfit.
totally. And don't forget about layering different shades of brown like we were talking about earlier to create those monochrome looks.
Yes. The podcast also reminded us that brown actually comes in so many different shades,
It does.
from those rich chocolates to those lighter, more airy tans.
It's true. It really runs the gamut.
It really does. So it's all about finding the shade that really suits your skin tone and your personal style.
Exactly. You've got to find what makes you feel confident and, radiant.
So this brings us to the final question that the podcast leaves us with.
Ooh, I love a good thought-provoking question.
Okay, so they ask, does this shift towards brown in fashion signal a bigger societal change? Like in our values and how we view things.
It's a big question, for sure.
It is, but it's worth thinking about, right? Like, is this whole embrace of brown, is it a sign that we're moving away from this culture of just like buying more and more stuff all the time
Yeah.
and moving towards, something more sustainable and meaningful?
I mean, are we starting to really value quality over quantity?
Right. And timelessness over trends, authenticity over just like, the superficial stuff.
Maybe brown with that like grounding, earthy energy. Maybe it's just the perfect color to represent this whole shift.
It's like brown is a symbol of a deeper connection, not just to nature, but also to ourselves and to a more mindful way of living.
And that's a pretty powerful message to be sending, especially through something as, I don't know, as seemingly simple as what color we choose to wear.
Exactly. It's like this reminder that even the smallest choices we make, they can actually reflect our values and, our vision for the world.
Who knows? Maybe by wearing brown, we're actually changing the world around us, one stylish step at a time.
That's a really good point. This whole deep dive into brown has been so insightful, and I have a feeling we'll all be looking at this color in a whole new light from now on.
Me too. I never thought I could have such a deep conversation about brown.
Right. So as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave everyone listening with a little challenge.
Oh,
okay?
we love a good challenge.
Take a look at your own wardrobe and see where you can, add a little brown. Maybe it's a new pair of boots or a cozy sweater or even just a simple accessory.
Yeah, just experiment. Have fun with it.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about, copying trends or anything like that. It's about finding what feels authentic and true to you.
And who knows? Maybe you'll discover that brown is exactly what your wardrobe's been missing. The color that brings your personal style and your values together in perfect harmony.
It's really kind of amazing how brown has gone from, I don't know, almost being ignored to now being this symbol of conscious style and that connection to nature.
It is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And you know what else strikes me? How this whole shift toward brown, it fits right in with this bigger movement in fashion, like moving away from just buying tons of stuff and being more thoughtful about what we wear.
Right. We're realizing that real style isn't about chasing trends or having a closet that's overflowing. It's about finding pieces that, really mean something to you and show who you are.
And those pieces, they don't have to be super expensive or flashy or anything. They just have to feel right.
Exactly. And I think that's a big part of why brown is resonating with so many people. It doesn't need to be loud or attention-grabbing. It just has this, quiet confidence,
Yeah, it's comfortable with itself.
Okay.
Which makes sense, right? Because it's so connected to the earth and it has all this history behind it.
The podcast host actually said something that really stuck with me. They said that wearing brown is almost like a little rebellion against that whole fast fashion thing, that pressure to always buy new stuff.
Oh, I like that. Because
Okay.
there is that sense of intentionality when you choose to wear brown. You're making a conscious choice to opt out of the trend cycle.
And to embrace something more timeless.
Exactly. And I think that intentionality, it goes beyond just our clothes too,
Oh, absolutely.
It's about being mindful in all parts of our lives, from the food we eat to how we consume media. It's about slowing down and really appreciating the simple things.
It's a shift towards a more mindful and sustainable way of being, really.
Yeah, and maybe brown, with its grounding, earthy vibes, maybe it's the perfect color for this new way of thinking.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of brown, what's your big takeaway? What's the one thing you'll be thinking about when you see this color from now on?
That's a good question.
Mm.
I think for me, it's that idea that brown isn't just a color. It's a symbol of a deeper connection
Deeper connection too.
to nature, to history, and to just being your true self. It's a reminder that real style, it lasts, it's sustainable, and it comes from within.
I love that. So to everyone listening, we encourage you to explore the world of brown and see what it means to you. Maybe you'll find that it's exactly what your wardrobe needs, the color that helps you show off your own unique style.
And your values, too. Don't forget those.
Absolutely. And as always, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world around us.
There's always something new to discover, just beneath the surface.
Until next time.